purpose of this podcast, you and I both want to give, whether it's parents, even players, current high school coaches, athletic directors, anybody in the high school realm, give them something they can listen to and give them something they can take away from this, that they can put in effect in their program or just give them food for thought when they're coaching their high school players.
I'm Ted Bishop along with Crystal Morse, and we'd like to welcome you to the only real high school golf podcast in America.
All right, Ted. So our first edition, we're super excited to be here. Our whole purpose of the high school golf podcast was, I'm a big podcast listener, right? So I couldn't find anything in the 5 years that we've been coaching, and I'm trying to enhance my coaching skills and learn about all this stuff, but I couldn't find any podcasts on high school golf. It was all college golf, or it was kind of at the elite junior level, how to raise these elite junior golfers. But I couldn't find anything in high school. For the kids that we're coaching here at the local high school level, nothing out there. So here we are. We decided to create this podcast and super excited about it. So I think one of the first things we're going to do is tell everybody a little bit about ourselves and what qualifies us to be able to speak on this topic. All right, I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm from Greenwood, Indiana, so I'm local. I was a two-time state finalist here at Center Grove High School my junior and senior year. I was on scholarship to Western Kentucky University, where I had a great career at Western, was all Sunbelt Conference my freshman year, had a lot of great finishes in college, captain of the team, which was a great experience. And basically after that, got into the golf business, and I've been in the golf business for, I guess it's going on a little over 20 years now. So as a PGA professional, which has really shaped and modeled my coaching for sure. Wise, have two young kids, 13-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter. Son plays golf. He's at middle school, so I'm kind of in the trenches with him going up into that high school age as well. And professionally, you're my boss. Professionally, I'm your head pro.
And you're married to a PGA pro.
And I'm married to a PGA pro. Golf runs in my blood. Spent a number of years out in Southern California in the business out there. Came back to Indiana, and basically player development, ever since I came back from Indiana, player development has been my passion. And so I'm a two-time award winner, youth player development award winner for the Indiana section. And just last year, 2024, obviously was a big highlight for my career, where I was awarded the National PGA Player Development Award. So huge accomplishment there as far as my career goes. So I'm excited to bring that all to the table. I feel like it gives us, a little bit of credibility to speak on the topic for sure.
Yeah, and I would add, I don't think that there's anyone in Indiana that's probably recognized as more of an authority on junior golf than Crystal is. As far as my experience goes, this will be my 40th year of being a PGA member. And I've coached high school golf actually on and off for over 40 years. My facility here at the Legends in Franklin hosted 30 state championships, 15 for the boys and 15 for the girls from 2000 to 2015. And before and after that, we've hosted numerous Indiana High School Athletic Association sectional and regional competitions. Like you, I was a parent of two children. I had two daughters who were outstanding junior players. Both had Division I college careers at Indiana University and the University of Kansas. And as high school players, between the two of them, I think they were all state 7 times, medaled on multiple occasions as individuals, and were part of 4 consecutive teams in Indiana that finished 3rd or better, and included a runner-up finish in that as well. I think since you and I have been coaching here at Franklin, our teams have won a sectional, we've won a regional, we've taken 3 teams to the state championships, and we've obviously been very involved with both the boys and girls programs. I served as the 38th president of the PGA of America in 2013 and 14, and during that time I was exposed to the greatest players in the world, was part of 3 Ryder Cups, which is the ultimate and team competition. And we'll talk about some of those experiences during these podcasts because they've influenced me as a coach, and I think they will offer some really good perspective that we can share with the people that watch our podcasts.
You do have a lot of great stories. I will say that. You have a lot of great stories. So basically, like I said before, the purpose of this podcast, you and I both want to give, whether it's parents, even players, current high school coaches, athletic directors, other, anybody in the high school realm, give them something they can listen to and give them something they can take away from this, that they can put in effect in their program or just give them food for thought when they're coaching their high school players. So that's really our purpose of this because, again, just offering the resources, and it helps us to always talk about the topics that we're going through. It helps us become better coaches as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this podcast will be targeted towards the state of Indiana, which is where we live and work. But I would say this, that any high school coach, player, parent, anywhere in the United States, there'll be content on these podcasts that I think people will find interesting. And the one thing that you left out when you talked about these other podcasts was the high school golf podcast you listened to, where the two high school coaches that had done it talked about the greatest thing about high school golf was being able to turn the players loose on the course and then go play themselves. And I laughed at that because when I got into the business in the mid-'70s, that's exactly how high school golf was. I think a lot of high school coaches really wanted to coach because it was going to give them some kind of access after school. And honestly, there wasn't a lot of hands-on coaching done with players at that point in time. But that has totally changed. And I think the most successful programs in Indiana, and there's a lot of them, a lot of small schools as well as large schools, they've got coaches that have gone to the trouble to educate themselves on certain things regarding the golf swing and being able to teach their players. And there's a game improvement element in high school coaching, at least in the state of Indiana right now, that didn't always exist. So these are also going to be some of the things that we're going to hopefully share with people, practices, things that we do to improve our players.
What I think that, too, is a hurdle for some programs that experience a high coaching turnover or that do have a hard time finding good coaches to coach high school golf. I feel like that could be a little bit of a hurdle for those coaches, for people that are like, hey, I would coach, but I don't know about this aspect of golf, or I don't feel like I could help them very much. So I feel like that keeps a lot of good coaches potentially away from coaching golf. And I think that's something we can offer too. You and I both know now, because of our background, we do help the players quite a bit with, potential swing mechanics. However, we have those players that go to other swing coaches, or once season starts, it's very little to do on actual mechanics of the swing. It has a lot to do with short game, course management, decision making, being able to manage your emotions, how to, fit in with the team, like your role on the team. So that's a lot of what can create a successful program.
It is, and the thing that I think you brought up an excellent point about probably the reservations that some coaches actually do go through, feeling that, well, maybe, they're not a great player, they're not an experienced player, they're maybe not qualified to help players. And what I would say, if that's the environment that you're coaching in, then seek out your local PGA professional. Try to get the professional at the course that you play engaged in some way in your program. And I'm sure there's high school teams that play at courses where there is no PGA professional. But I think what you'll find is that in every area of the state or every area of the country you're in, there are PGA pros who thrive on helping people get better to play. And you might be surprised. There could be a lot of them out there, men and women, who in some cases, if budgets are low, would even be happy to volunteer their services on a limited basis to help make your team better.
Absolutely. And that brings up another topic, too, which we can dig into. One of the challenges of high school golf is course availability, right? Course access, maybe finding a course to practice at, to play at, all to say what you just mentioned, building that relationship with a PGA professional. If you're a coach, go into your local shop, talk to your PGA professional, set up a meeting with them, tell them what you want to do, your vision for the team, and I guarantee they're going to hop on board. There's a lot of pros that just love to talk about how to develop players, how to develop teams, and can really help you with that vision. And also, it's so important for that high school coach to have the relationship with a PGA pro when it comes to running tournaments. Makes it a lot smoother for those tournament days if the pro and the coach have a good relationship, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I would think that whatever high school you coach at or play at, or your kids play at, things will go a lot smoother at that facility if you do, in fact, have a good relationship with your local PGA professional. On occasion, you're not going to have to listen to Crystal and I talk for 30 minutes every time we do this, but we're going to try to bring in some other high school and college coaches. We're going to bring in some former standout high school players. We're going to bring in some experts on the mental and physical aspect of training. And then we're going to bring in some national golf personalities I think that people will find interesting. And everybody that we just talked about has got some connection in some way, shape, or form to high school golf. And our goal is to make these podcasts as interesting as they possibly can be for you. And I think you're going to really look forward to some of the stuff that we have coming up.
Absolutely. And a couple of the topics we're going to be discussing that you can really look forward to. One of the big ones now that we are doing to prep for the 2025 season is fundraising and raising money for our teams. And I'll tell you what, Ted Bishop is the best at putting together money raising opportunities. So you know how to raise money, and you've done it in your career, and you're doing it for our high school golf team as well.
Well, I appreciate your saying that, and the reason that we do it is real simple. High school golf is a non-revenue sport. It creates absolutely no revenue for athletic departments, and budgets are going to be limited based on the fact that athletic directors are really faced with nothing but expenses from high school golf. So Crystal's right. We've got some creative ways and some things that we can share that hopefully can maybe help you enhance your budget and give your players some resources they need to compete.
That's going to be a big topic. We'll talk about, obviously, creating positive team chemistry, some things that we've done to try to create good team chemistry on our teams. We've coached the boys and the girls teams. I'm not really even sure we mentioned that, but we do coach boys and girls. Different dynamic for both. So we have, honestly, our discussions on the teams, they're going to be different topics probably because it's a different dynamic. Creating team chemistry with the boys is a little different for us than creating team chemistry with the girls. So that'll be a topic of conversation for sure. Dealing with success and failure, communicating expectations with players and parents. That's something we learn about every season. I think we could admit to that, how we can better communicate, how the expectations get communicated. That's always a challenge. I'd say that's one of the biggest challenges. Could be.
Well, there's no question about it. And I think that every season that goes by, I feel like I learn as a coach. And every time you think you have it figured out from a coaching standpoint and how to communicate with players, then you have a new group of players that come in. The personalities are different. The needs are different. And you cannot coach the same way. And I would be the first to admit that I am not a perfect coach. I do have high expectations for my players and try to hold them to the same standards that you and I operate with, that, we're all in. Once the season starts, and even in the off season now, I think that's the other thing we haven't really talked about, that high school coaching in golf is so much different than it used to be because it's no longer a seasonal thing, Crystal. I mean, if you're going to do this thing right and your players are going to be successful, there's a year-round commitment, and there are limitations that the State High School Association in Indiana puts on us as coaches as it relates to how much contact we can have with our players during certain times of the year. But I feel as a coach that it's a 12-month commitment, and we'll get into some of that. We'll talk about scheduling of off-season tournaments. We'll talk a little bit about the rules of golf. We're going to talk about how to be a good teammate. We'll talk about, as you said, dealing with success and failure. And I think the other thing, creating a positive image for your program in your school system, in your community. That's going to kind of feed back into your ability to probably raise some money and enhance financially what you're trying to do. And then we'll talk from time to time, and we'll probably bring some sports psychologists in on this one about the art of coaching parents. And sometimes my biggest frustration as a coach is I feel like I might be spending more time once in a while coaching my parents than I am my players.
Absolutely. We talk about that. And we'll talk about it on here too. But it really, one of the hot topics is communication. This is one thing that in how communication with players has had to change for coaches, and it's had to evolve from back when I was a player, right? And when you were playing sports. The level of communication is different. The way of communication is different with kids. I think there's a lot of factors for that. We've discussed that, the whole social media, technology, phones, COVID, how that all affected the communication that kids have with adults and with each other. And it's a big topic that I feel like we're still, like every year, I'm kind of like, okay, this is where it's at right now. It takes a lot more mental effort and energy to really connect with the players because we are battling the phones and we're battling the screens and we're battling the distractions. So like on our part, it takes a lot of energy mentally and preparation to be able to effectively connect with your players.
Well, it does. And I think that the coaches that are out there watching this podcast or listening to it right now can relate to this. You know, I started coaching high school golf, actually middle school golf in Linton, Indiana back in the early 80s. Okay, now Linton was 40 miles west of Bloomington and Indiana University. So the central coaching figure in that part of the state year-round was Bob Knight. All right, Bob Knight had a certain way that he coached basketball. Bob Knight was hard on players. Bob Knight was a very vocal coach, but Bob Knight won. And there were a lot of coaches, and one of the things you do as a coach is you try to emulate your style after other successful coaches that you've seen coach. And I would say in golf, that's true. I mean, we might be different in who we would look at, but I would look at successful basketball coaches, baseball managers, things that I feel like are going on that do help the communication. I would try to emulate my coaching style after that. And one of the things that I kind of learned early on is that you can't coach golf, and I was coaching boys golf at that time back in the mid-'80s. You can't coach boys golf like Bob Knight would coach basketball. And I probably, the first couple of years, I did try to coach that way. I kicked range balls on the range and buckets and I got in players' faces, and I regret that because I look back at a couple of the really good kids that I had, and I think now, boy, if I would have treated them a little bit differently, they probably would have responded better and been better players. But that's just kind of a natural thing that coaches fall into. But certainly, to your point, coaches coach differently than they did a long time ago. And that's a challenge of coaching. But I think as it relates specifically to golf, all right, because golf is such a mental game, anything that we can do to make it easier on our players when they're on the golf course, to get them not to overthink things, to try to create diversions which take attention away from the pressure of playing the game. These are all keys that I think a lot of the great golf coaches have been able to figure out over the years. And that's what I really love just about the evolution of every single season that we coach, even as long as I've coached, is I learn something new every year from my players. And because of that, I look forward to every season.
It's a different dynamic every season. Especially in high school golf with the seniors graduating each year if you have seniors. And then our freshmen, these are 14-year-old kids that are coming in And where it's you have a wide range of this 14 to 18-year-olds, and it's just such an interesting dynamic so many times where it requires really a different form of communication for a 14-year-old versus an 18-year-old. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of high school golf is that in itself.
No question. And you talked about the difference between coaching boys and coaching girls, and every season that we coach girls, we tell the incoming freshmen and the parents just how hard this season's going to be. You're coming in here playing golf courses in middle school that in a lot of cases you played from the fairways. You didn't even tee off from the forward tees. You're playing against 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls, and all of a sudden you come in as a freshman and you go to the state preview if you're fortunate enough to play on a team like we have, which we do have freshmen playing once in a while. And you'll go to a course like Prairie View where the golf course is set up at 6,000 yards. It's an absolute gauntlet. And it's the most difficult transition that there is in any sport in our high school because we don't have a freshman golf team. We don't even really have a junior varsity golf team. And all of a sudden, these 14-year-old girls are competing against 18-year-old women who are, in some cases, going to be playing college golf a year later. And it's overpowering.
Overwhelming for them, for sure.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to coach them through that, really, because it's like, it's coming, but it's just hard it's a challenge, for sure.
So what I kind of like to do to kind of close this first podcast out is just maybe share some valuable lessons learned that we both had as coaches over our careers. So let's start with you.
Well, that's a good question. I think, again, going back to the communication part, the biggest lesson that I probably learned from when I started coaching at Whiteland, I was, had been in the business, the PGA, still a PGA professional, but that was my first coaching job. And I feel like what I've learned over the years is that you can be a friend to the players. Like, you can be a role model. You can be somebody they can talk to and come to. You want to create that environment for them, but they need discipline. They need structure. They need guidance. They need boundaries. And those need to be effectively communicated. And I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway is, okay, how can I be a positive role model to them, yet set behavioral boundaries, expectations, communicate those without coming across as being a negative coach or being being hard on them, so to speak. So a challenge and something I feel like I'm still learning. Okay, so those are kind of, I feel like that's a lesson I'm still kind of learning in coaching, but I learn it a little bit more every year. And again, just as we progress in coaching each year, just the importance of developing that connection with the student in the student athlete in the off season. What are you doing in the off season? How can we help you get better? For the multi-sport athletes, what can we do to, obviously we support multi-sport athletes, but what can we do to help you when you're not in golf season? Just developing that connection with a student athlete. So.
Sure. Well, me, I love to tell stories.
You do.
And I thought the kind of the lesson that I would share would go back to the 2010 Ryder Cup at Celtic Manor in Wales. And the way the Ryder Cup works, there's 28 points possible each time that we have a match. It's a match between the United States and Europe. And the United States had won the Ryder Cup at Valhalla in 2008. So anytime the Ryder Cup would wind up being tied at 14-14, then whoever had won the previous Ryder Cup would retain the cup. So the United States goes into that 2010 Ryder Cup at Wales only needing to win 14 of the 28 points to retain the cup. And they wound up losing the Ryder Cup 14.5 to 13.5, a half a point short of retaining the Ryder Cup. And we had a bunch of rain delays over there that year, and I can't even remember what round this happened in, first or second round, but Ricky Fowler and Jim Furyk were playing Lee Westwood and Martin Keimer in the alternate shot. And Furyk had hooked his ball left of the fairway into some rough, which was real muddy. We had a lot of rain over there, as I mentioned. And so Jim picked his ball up. They were going to be able to get relief from casual water. And Ricky got ready to hit the next shot. They're playing alternate shot. Ricky instinctively took a ball out of his pocket, dropped it on the ground, hit the shot, and then as they were walking to the green, he realized that he had put an incorrect ball into play. He needed to continue to hit the ball that Furyk had teed off with, so the Americans wound up losing the hole. And Furyk and Fowler lost the match 1-up because of that rules violation. Now, had Fowler taken the correct drop, they would have halved the match. The matches would have wound up 14-14, and the United States would have retained the Ryder Cup in 2010. Now I fast forward to Medina. Again, the Europeans win the Ryder Cup 14.5 to 13.5. And it happens because Tiger Woods concedes the 18th hole to Francesco Molinari. The match was decided in the group in front when Martin Keimer beat Steve Stricker on the 18th hole. That was the 14th point that the Europeans had gotten. So at that point, Woods' match with Molinari, which was even going into the 18th hole, meant absolutely nothing. So Tiger conceded the tie on the 18th hole. The Europeans, by score, win the match 14.5 to 13.5. But that match could have very easily wound up 14-14, and the United States, had they tied it at Celtic Manor, they would have again retained the Ryder Cup. And that would have been 3 straight Ryder Cups that the United States would have won, retained. And everybody that follows the Ryder Cup knows the dismal history that the United States had during that period of time. And not throwing the blame on Ricky Fowler for anything. It was a mistake that took place, and it was a rule that got violated, and the penalty was assessed. But it's amazing that something like that happened in 2010 would have the residual that would affect the 2012 competition and the 2014 competition. So the reason that I bring this up is just to emphasize that rules are important. Taking correct rulings are important. And that's sometimes something that we see can be very challenging at the high school level.
It's probably be a different conversation, but you and I talk. I'm like, when I played, I had a rules book in my bag. A lot of times we didn't have rules officials back then in high school golf. So, I'm whipping out the rules book. Girls I'm playing with have rules book, too. So we're kind of self-monitoring each other. Nowadays, it's not really the case. You player, if they're wanting to take an unplayable lie or have a question, they don't have that confidence to take it on their own. They're always calling over a rules official or a coach, or kind of slows down the pace of play. So that confidence in rules, knowing the rules, that's a great topic. We look forward to discussing the importance of that for sure. This concludes our first podcast. I'm going to let people know kind of how they can get in touch with us and where to follow. So if you want to ask a question, just connect with us and talk about high school golf even further after the podcast. My email address is Crystal, and that's CRYSTAL at thelegendsgolfclub.com.
My email address is tedbishop38pga at AOL.com.
You can feel free to email us any questions you may have, or again, kind of further topics of conversation that you want to hear on the podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. Our YouTube page is the only real high school golf podcast. Be sure to subscribe to that. You can follow us on Apple and Spotify, so you make sure you don't miss an episode of our podcast.
Yeah, and we'll also share these podcasts on all the social media outlets that Crystal and I are both involved in. Look forward to sharing this every time we do a podcast with the Indiana High School Golf Coaches Association. They have a large following, and certainly that's the target audience for us. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this and how much I look forward to a complete year of doing a whole bunch of really interesting topics. For Crystal Morse, I'm Ted Bishop. Thanks for listening to this edition of the only real high school golf podcast in America.